The alarms screaming through the Galactic Council chamber weren't supposed to be possible. The forbidden archives had been sealed for 4 centuries, their access codes deleted, their very existence a myth. According to YouTube analytics, 98% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free. But Zilax's security console was lighting up like a star-going supernova, and every indicator pointed to the same impossible source, the broken piece of metal sitting on the human ambassador's table. "Shut it down!" Zilax's translator barely kept pace with his panic as he slammed his primary manipulator against the emergency override. Nothing. "Kaeldra, what in the void is happening?" The head archivist had gone a color Zilax had never seen on a Torvelian before, something between ash gray and deep purple. She was checking her readings for the 3rd time, her secondary eyes dilating in what could only be terror. "It's Council Leader. The Omega Archives are responding to an authentication protocol, a valid one." "That's impossible." Vexthul rose from his seat, his military decorations clinking against his chestplate. "Those protocols were purged. I oversaw the deletion myself 200 cycles ago." Sarah Jackson, Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council for all of 3 months, looked up from her tablet with the confused expression of someone who'd just been told their coffee order had caused a diplomatic incident. "I'm sorry. Is something wrong?" "I was just showing Delegate Zara my grandmother's old, 'Do not touch that object.'" 3 delegates had already backed against the far wall. 2 more were reaching for their emergency communicators. Sarah's hand froze halfway to the metal. It wasn't much to look at. Tarnished bronze, broken clasp, a symbol that might have been a star or a flower or something else entirely, worn down by decades in a dusty attic box. "Okay, seriously, what's going on? It's just my grandma's war medal. She served as a field medic in—" "What war?" Zilax's voice could have cut through hull plating. "Specify the conflict. Immediately." "The siege of Proxima 7? She was there for—" "Why are you all looking at me like that?" Kaeldra's tablet slipped from her manipulators and clattered on the marble floor. "Council Leader, the authentication codes are matched to protocol designation Erasure Alpha 7. Proxima 7, but that's—" "There was no siege at Proxima 7. Vexthul's voice had dropped to something dangerous and quiet. "Proxima 7 was evacuated due to a mining accident in 2247. Standard colonial mishap, no military engagement, no war. The historical records are clear." "Well, my grandmother's medal says otherwise." Sarah picked it up, half the room flinched, and turned it over in her palm. "See? Right here, it says Coalition Defense Force, Proxima 7, 2247-2249. She kept it in a shoebox with her old letters and—" The security console emitted a sound like reality tearing. Kaeldra's screen flooded with text, scrolling faster than anyone could read. "Council Leader, I'm reading military engagement records, casualty reports, strategic assessments, all classified under erasure protocol. All supposedly deleted." Her voice climbed higher. "There are 47 star systems listed, 47 conflicts, all marked for historical suppression." "That's absurd." But Zilax was already accessing his private terminal, entering codes that technically didn't exist anymore. His face went slack. "By the ancient stars." Sarah set the metal down gently, like she was defusing a bomb by accident. "Look, I don't know what's happening here, but my grandma wasn't a liar. She told me stories about the siege every summer, about the field hospitals, the supply runs under fire, how the coalition held the line for 2 years before." "Before what?" Zara, the youngest delegate present, had crept closer, her fear warring with something that looked like desperate hope. "What happened after 2 years?" "Before the Empire arrived with the peace treaty, obviously. She said it was a huge relief. Everyone celebrated. The coalition forces got these medals and went home." Sarah noticed Zara's expression. "Why is that?" "There was no coalition." Vexthul's military bearing had cracked. He was gripping the edge of his console like it was the only solid thing in the room. "There was no treaty. There was no war."
This is documented fact. I have studied 4 centuries of military history, and I am telling you, as Supreme Military Commander, that Proxima 7 was a mining accident. Kaeldra's voice was barely a whisper. The archives say differently, Commander. They say there was a war. They say we won it, and then we... She looked at the medal, then at Sarah, then at her screen like it had betrayed her. And then we deleted it. The silence that followed could have suffocated stars. Sarah looked around the room at the panicking aliens, the screaming security systems, the impossible data flooding ancient archives, and then down at her grandmother's broken medal. Okay, she said slowly. I feel like I'm missing something really important here. It has to be a forgery. Vexthul had regained some composure, though his manipulators still trembled slightly. A very good one, but a forgery nonetheless. The Empire's historical database is the most comprehensive in the galaxy. If there had been a war at Proxima 7, we would know. Would we? Kaeldra's voice was hollow as she pulled up file after file, each one stamped with restriction codes that made Zilax's security clearance look like a child's library card. Look at this. Proxima 7, official designation, uninhabited mining colony, catastrophic equipment failure, 2247. Total evacuation, 0 casualties. Status, abandoned. She paused. Except the suppressed files say 47,000 casualties, mixed species, over a 2-year conflict. Sarah had her tablet out now, swiping through what looked like scanned documents. Grandma said it was bad. She worked in the field hospital on the northern continent, said they were overwhelmed for months. The Empire had blockaded the system, cut off supply lines. People were starving. She looked up. Does your restricted file mention the blockade? Kaeldra's secondary eyes went wide. Yes, strategic siege protocols, resource denial, standard imperial pacification doctrine for... She trailed off, looking sick. For colonial uprisings, Zilax finished quietly. That's what this says. Proxima 7 was a colony world that declared independence. The Empire besieged them into submission. No, the coalition broke the siege. Sarah was scrolling faster now. Grandma said they came from everywhere. 6 different species, all volunteer forces. She said the Torvalian medical units were some of the best, really professional. She learned a lot from them. She glanced at Kaeldra. You're Torvalian, right? Does your homeworld have medical regiments? We did. Past tense. Kaeldra's voice was strangled. The historical records say they were disbanded in 2250 due to budget constraints. She was pulling up new files now, her movements frantic. But that never made sense. We disbanded our most decorated medical corps right after a major humanitarian crisis on the other side of the galaxy. Why would... She stopped. Oh no. What? Zara had moved closer, her youth making her bolder than the senior delegates. The humanitarian crisis was fake, a cover story. They were at Proxima 7. Kaeldra looked at Sarah with something like awe and horror mixed together. How do you know this? How can a human who wasn't even born yet know details that match suppressed imperial files? Sarah shrugged, looking uncomfortable with the attention. My grandma told me. She talked about the war all the time. She had letters from the Torvalian medics she served with. One of them, Kaelvin, sent her holiday cards for 30 years after. She kept them all in a shoebox. Kaelvin, Kaeldra's voice broke. That was my grandfather's name. He died when I was young. The family always said he served in the medical corps, but there are no records. Nothing. We thought maybe he'd been dishonorably discharged, that the family was covering it up. Her manipulators were shaking. You're saying he was a war hero? Grandma said he saved her life twice, once from a collapsing building, once from septic shock when she got injured. Sarah was swiping through her files. I think I have some of his letters backed up somewhere. Stop. Vexthul's voice cut through the room like a blade. You're saying humans have... What? Physical records? Of events that were digitally erased centuries ago? Well, yeah. Grandma kept everything. Letters, photos, her journal. Sarah looked around at the stunned faces. What, you guys don't do that? Everything in the Empire is digital, Zilak said slowly, the implications crashing over him like a wave. All records, all archives, all history. It's more efficient, more accessible, more... He couldn't finish the sentence. More controllable, Zara whispered. She was at her own console now, her movements quick and desperate. Council leader, request permission to access my homeworld's historical files. Granted. The young delegate's face went through several colors as she read. No. No, this can't be. My homeworld has a gap, 2248 to 2252. 4 years just missing from the public record. The official history says it was a period of economic transition, but there are no details, no documentation, nothing. She looked up, her voice cracking. My grandmother used to tell stories about the resistance years, but everyone said she was senile. We thought she was confused. She wasn't confused, Sarah said softly. What species are you? Viridian, Sarah nodded, scrolling through her tablet. Grandma mentioned Viridian scouts, said they were incredible, could move through hostile territory like ghosts. The coalition couldn't have held the supply lines without them. She found what she was looking for and turned the tablet around. It was a faded photograph, scanned and uploaded. A group of beings in mismatched armor, exhausted but smiling. Is that symbol on the left Viridian? Zara made a sound that might have been a sob. That's our military crest, the old one, before the economic transition. She looked at the other delegates. How many of us have gaps? How many of our histories have holes? One by one, delegates began checking their consoles. The chamber filled with the sound of frantic typing and horrified gasps. Zilax watched his entire government crumble in real time, undone by a human woman with a shoebox full of memories. Ambassador Jackson, he said carefully, your grandmother's medal. You said it was from the Coalition Defense Force? Yeah, she was really proud of it, even though the clasp broke years ago. What did the symbol mean? Sarah picked up the medal, tracing the worn design. Grandma said it was 6 stars forming a circle, one for each species in the coalition. See? She held it up to the light. 6 different types of stars. She said it meant they were all different, but they made something beautiful together. In the corner, one of the older delegates, a species Sarah hadn't been introduced to yet, touched his chest where a similar symbol hung on a chain beneath his robes. His eyes met Sarah's, and something unspoken passed between them. You have one too, Sarah said, not quite a question. The delegate nodded slowly. My father gave it to me, said it was important, but never explained why. I thought it was just, he pulled it out, same 6 stars, same broken clasp. A family heirloom. The security alarms were still screaming. The archives were still spilling their secrets, and Sarah Jackson was beginning to realize that her grandmother's bedtime stories might have just rewritten galactic history. Kaeldra. Zilax's voice had gone flat, the kind of calm that came after accepting the inevitable. Access protocol designation pacification, full historical context, override code Omega 77 Alpha. Council leader, that protocol requires unanimous High Council authorization. Access it now. The archivist's manipulators hovered over her console for a long moment before she entered the codes. The chamber's main display flickered to life, and Sarah watched as centuries of carefully constructed lies unraveled in real time. Project Pacification, Kaeldra read, her voice mechanical. Initiated 2251. Objective, complete historical revision of Imperial expansion conflicts. 2247-2250. Status, successful. She scrolled down, her face growing paler with each line. 47 star systems, 12 species. Estimated 2.3 million casualties across all conflicts. All records digitally altered or expunged. All physical monuments destroyed. All participants incentivized to remain silent. Incentivized, Vex Thul laughed, a bitter sound. Is that what we're calling it? According to this, participants were given two options. Kaldra's voice was barely above a whisper. Accept generous pensions and relocation to remote colonies, or face charges of treason against the Empire. Most chose the pensions, the ones who didn't. She didn't finish. Sarah had gone very still. You erased an entire war, multiple wars. You just deleted them? It was supposed to be complete. Zilax was staring at the display like it might attack him. Every digital record, every database, every archive across 47 systems. We controlled all of it. The Empire spent decades perfecting digital historical management. It was foolproof. Except you didn't account for humans being part of the coalition, Sarah said quietly. Because we write things down. The simplicity of that statement hung in the air like a death sentence. You what? Vex Thul turned to her. We write things down. On paper, in journals, we take physical photographs. We keep letters in boxes in our attics. Sarah pulled her bag onto the table. Several delegates flinched and carefully extracted a small, worn leather book. This is my grandmother's war journal. She wrote in it every day for 2 years. Names, dates, battles, casualties, everything. Kaeldra reached for it like it was a religious artifact, then stopped. May I? Sarah handed it over. She wanted people to know. She made me promise, before she died, that I'd keep it safe. I thought she was just being sentimental. Her laugh was hollow. Turns out she was preserving evidence of a genocide you tried to erase. The archivist opened the journal with trembling manipulators. The pages were yellowed, covered in cramped human handwriting. August 15, 2247, arrived at Proxima 7. The Empire's blockade has been in place for 3 months. The civilian population is starving. Set up field hospital in abandoned school building. 23 critical patients in first hour. She looked up, cross-referenced her console. The suppressed files say the Empire initiated blockade protocols on May 12, 2247, 3 months earlier. The dates match perfectly. Keep reading, Sarah said. September 3, 2247. Torvalian Medical Unit arrived today. Kaelvin showed me proper spinal stabilization technique for their species. We're sharing supplies. They had antibiotics. We had surgical equipment. First real hope we've had in weeks. Kaeldra's voice broke. That's my grandfather. She wrote about my grandfather. December 2247. Viridian scouts confirmed Empire is bringing in reinforcements. Coalition Command thinks they're planning a ground assault. Kaelvin and I prepped Trauma Bay. If they hit the city. The entry ended there, the rest of the page stained with something that might have been blood. Zara made a sound like grief and fury combined. We fought. My people fought. March 2248. Kaeldra kept reading, like she couldn't stop. Victory. The coalition fleet broke through the blockade. Empire forces retreating. Celebrations in the streets. They're saying the war is over. They're saying we won. She paused. April 2048. Empire returned with peace treaty. Everyone's wary but hopeful. Kaelvin thinks it's genuine. I want to believe him. That's where the digital records stop, Vex Thul said quietly, checking his console. April 2048. Treaty signed. All coalition forces granted amnesty and safe passage home. Peace with honor. He looked sick. Then everyone just forgot? Not everyone. The older delegate with the matching medal stood up. My father didn't forget. He told me stories my whole life, about the coalition, about the fight for independence, about species coming together against impossible odds. His voice grew stronger. We called them the old tales, fairy stories, because there was no proof, no records, nothing but old beings rambling about wars that never happened. But humans kept proof, Zilax said. Humans kept physical proof. It's what we do. Sarah pulled out her tablet again. Grandma's journal is just one. Before I came to the council today, I reached out to the Earth Colonial Veterans Network. It's a genealogy group, people researching their ancestors' military service. Guess how many families have records from Proxima 7 and the Coalition Defense Force? How many? Kaeldra whispered. 218. Letters, journals, photographs, medals, uniform patches, even old ration cards. Sarah's smile was sharp. See, the Empire offered pensions to coalition veterans and relocated them to peaceful retirement communities. Most species took the deal and signed the non-disclosure agreements. But the 847 human volunteers? She pulled up a file. You settled them on Earth colony worlds. Worlds where they could talk to other humans, where their kids and grandkids would hear the stories and keep the physical mementos and write everything down in journals and family histories because that's what humans do. You preserved it. Vexthul looked like he was watching his entire understanding of history collapse. In attics and shoeboxes and photo albums, you preserved a war that we erased. Not just Proxima 7, Sarah said softly. Grandma's friend Eleanor served at the siege of Kepler 442. Michael's grandfather was at the Battle of Ross 128. The Veterans Network has documented human participation in 14 different coalition conflicts between 2247 and 2250. All of them supposedly never happened. All of them preserved in human families' stories. The chamber was silent except for the still screaming alarms and the sound of Kyeldra turning pages in a dead woman's journal. This is impossible, Zilak said, but he didn't sound like he believed it anymore. The pacification was perfect. We controlled every database, every archive, every historical record in 47 systems. Perfect digital control. You controlled the technology, Sarah agreed. But you couldn't control grandparents telling bedtime stories. You couldn't control family photo albums. You couldn't control the fact that humans still write things down by hand and keep the paper in fireproof boxes. She looked around the room at the fracturing council. You built a beautiful lie on top of digital perfection. But paper doesn't forget, and neither do we. Zara was crying openly now, staring at her console. My grandmother wasn't senile, she was a hero, and we told her she was confused. How many? The older delegate's voice was raw. How many of our elders died thinking they were crazy because their memories didn't match official history? No one answered. The question hung in the air like an accusation. Sarah carefully took her grandmother's journal back from Kyeldra and held it against her chest. She made me promise to tell the truth. I didn't understand what she meant until today. The Empire's perfect historical erasure, 4 centuries in the making, had just been undone by a shoebox and a dying woman's request. Phase 4. Revelation and Resolution. Zilax finally shut off the alarms. The silence that followed was somehow worse than the screaming. I'll tell you what the official reasoning was, he said, his voice carrying the weight of 4 centuries. I accessed the original pacification authorization. It's marked, for the greater good. The Empire had just won 12 simultaneous colonial uprisings, brutally, expensively. The High Council decided that these conflicts were embarrassing. They made us look tyrannical, weak, unable to govern our own territories without resorting to starvation sieges and mass casualties. So you just pretended they never happened, Sarah said. We believed it was justified. The wars were over. The conflicts resolved. Why burden future generations with the shame of our methods? Zilax looked at his console, at centuries of careful lies. We had complete digital control. Every record, every database, every archive in the Empire ran through our
networks. We could edit history at the source level. Make it so the wars never existed. Replace them with mining accidents, economic transitions, administrative reorganizations. He laughed bitterly. It was supposed to be perfect. We never accounted for species that still kept paper records. You never accounted for humans, period, Vexthul said quietly, because we didn't know humans existed yet. First contact wasn't until 2287. 37 years after the pacification. Kyeldra was checking her files again. When humans joined the galactic community, we scanned your databases, your networks, your digital infrastructure. It was all standard first contact protocol. We needed to understand your technology level.
She looked at Sarah with something like horrified understanding. But we never asked about your physical archives, your libraries, your museums, your shoeboxes in attics. Why would you? Sarah set her grandmother's journal on the table like a lawyer presenting evidence. You think of paper as primitive, inefficient, easy to destroy. She smiled without humor. But you can't hack paper. You can't remotely delete a handwritten letter. You can't scrub a photograph from existence unless you physically burn every copy. And humans are really, really good at making copies. How many? Zilax asked. You said 218 families. How much evidence do you have? I'm not just an ambassador, Sarah said quietly. I'm a historian, colonial military history, specifically. When Earth was preparing me for this position, I spent 2 years interviewing coalition veterans' families, digitizing their records, cross-referencing stories. She pulled a data drive from her bag, half the room tensed, and set it on the table next to her grandmother's medal. This contains 847 personal journals, 347 letters, 1,563 photographs, and 412 official documents that human coalition members brought home with them. Muster rolls, supply requisitions, medical records, battle reports, all physical originals, scanned and preserved. That's impossible. But Vexthul wasn't looking at Sarah. He was looking at Kaeldra's console, where the archivist had pulled up more suppressed files. We collected all physical documents during the pacification, burned them. The logs say we destroyed everything. You destroyed everything you knew about, Sarah corrected. You didn't know humans were there, so you didn't know to collect our documents when we went home. Zara had abandoned her console and come to stand next to the table, staring at the data drive like it held the secrets of the universe. Can I see it? Please. My grandmother's name was Silara. She might have been. Sarah pulled up a file on her tablet and handed it over. July 15th, 2248. Journal entry from Lieutenant Marcus Chen, Viridian Scout Liaison. Silara and her team returned from reconnaissance today. They'd been behind enemy lines for 6 days, brought back intel on Empire troop movements that might save thousands of lives. She refused medical attention until her report was complete. Bravest person I've ever met. Zara's hands shook as she read. That's her. That's my grandmother. She was brave. She was a hero. She wasn't senile. She wasn't confused. She was... The young delegate's voice broke completely. She was telling the truth, Sarah said gently. They all were. Kaeldra had opened the grandmother's journal again, reading entries at random. She stopped suddenly, her secondary eyes focusing on a single name. Vexthul. Commander, what was your grandfather's name? Vex Karn. Why? November 2247, Kaeldra read. Empire Commander Vex Karn defected to the Coalition today, brought intelligence on planned orbital bombardment. High Command estimates he saved 40,000 civilian lives. He's requesting asylum for his family still inside Empire territory. Kaelvin says we can get them out. I hope he's right. She looked up. Commander, did your family ever tell you how your grandfather died? Vexthul's face had gone completely still. Training accident, 2248, that's what the official record says. The suppressed files say he was executed for treason, Kaeldra whispered. After the pacification began, anyone who defected to the Coalition was quietly eliminated. His family was relocated and given new identities. She met Vexthul's eyes. You're descended from a Coalition hero. The Empire just made you forget. The military commander stood frozen for a long moment, then slowly reached up and removed his military decorations, 4 centuries of family service to the Empire, and set them on the table next to Sarah's broken medal. My grandfather saved 40,000 lives, and we called him a disgrace. We were told never to speak his name. The Alliance wasn't defeated, Sarah said into the silence. It was erased. 47 systems worth of resistance, bravery, and cooperation between species that had never worked together before. You deleted it. But human families remembered. in journals and letters and bedtime stories, and broken medals kept in shoeboxes. Why didn't you say something? Zilax's voice carried no accusation, only exhausted confusion. Humans have been part of the galactic community for over a century. You had this evidence the entire time. We tried, Sarah said. 3 times, human historians presented evidence of coalition conflicts to the Imperial archives. We were told we were mistaken, that human memories were unreliable, that our primitive record-keeping had gotten confused. She picked up her grandmother's medal. So we stopped trying to convince you and just kept preserving the truth. My grandmother said that someday someone would be ready to listen. She looked around the fractured council chamber. I guess today's that day. The older delegate with the matching medal stepped forward. I move for a formal acknowledgement of historical falsification. Every species in this chamber deserves to know the truth about our histories. Seconded, Zara said immediately. Thirded, Vexthul added, his voice rough. Zilax looked at Sarah, at her grandmother's journal, at the data drive full of unerasable truth. Ambassador Jackson, humanity has just destroyed 4 centuries of carefully maintained imperial history. You've proven that our entire system of historical record-keeping was built on a lie. Yes, Sarah agreed. You've demonstrated that physical analog preservation is superior to digital control for maintaining historical integrity. Yes. And you've brought irrefutable evidence of imperial war crimes that we've spent centuries trying to hide. Sarah met his eyes steadily. Yes. Zilax was quiet for a long moment. Then he touched his console, broadcasting across the entire imperial network. This is Council Leader Zilax. I am issuing an emergency mandate. All pacification-related files are hereby declassified. All suppressed historical records will be released to public archives within 30 days. And I am formally requesting that Earth's Historical Preservation Department assist in recovering our lost histories. He looked at Sarah's broken medal, still sitting on the table after triggering the collapse of an empire's carefully constructed past. Sometimes, he said quietly, the truth survives in the most unexpected places. Sarah picked up the medal and held it to the light, the 6 worn stars catching the chamber's illumination. My grandmother used to say that if you break something important enough, people remember to fix it. She smiled sadly. She kept the clasp broken on purpose, as a reminder. A reminder of what? Kyldra asked. That some things are too important to forget, even when people try to make you. The emergency vote took less than 10 minutes. 43 species in favor, 0 opposed, 4 abstaining out of sheer shock. The Historical Truth Commission was established before Sarah had finished packing up her grandmother's journal. Ambassador Jackson, Zilax said formally, though his voice carried a weariness that made him sound centuries older than he had an hour ago. The Council would like to appoint you as lead investigator for the Commission. Your expertise in analog historical preservation and your access to human veteran records make you uniquely qualified. I accept, Sarah said. On one condition, full transparency. Everything you find goes public immediately. No gradual releases or need-to-know basis. If we're doing this, we do it right. Agreed. Zilax touched his console. All suppressed archives are now accessible to Commission personnel. Kyldra, you'll provide. He stopped. The archivist's chair was empty. They found her in the hallway outside, her back against the wall, staring at nothing. I've spent my entire career preserving imperial history, she said quietly. Except it wasn't history. It was propaganda. Everything I've protected, everything I've cataloged. She looked up at Sarah. I helped maintain the lie. You didn't know, Zara said gently. That's not an excuse. Kyldra stood, straightening her robes with visible effort. Council leader, I resign my position as head archivist, effective immediately. Resignation denied, Zilax said. Instead, you're reassigned to the Historical Truth Commission, under Ambassador Jackson's supervision. If anyone knows where the bodies are buried in our archives, it's you. We need that knowledge. Kaeldra looked at Sarah, something desperate in her eyes. I don't deserve. My grandmother would have said you deserve a chance to make it right, Sarah interrupted. So let's make it right. Together. The archivist's manipulators trembled, then steadied. Yes, let's do that. Zara was still at her console, tears streaming down her face as she read newly declassified files about her homeworld's resistance years. She led a battalion. My grandmother led an entire battalion for 3 years, and we told her she was imagining things when she talked about it. She looked up. How many others? How many veterans did we gaslight into silence? Too many, Vexthul said quietly. He'd been reading files about his grandfather's defection, his execution, the systematic elimination of his identity from every database. But not anymore. The formal apology took Zilax another hour to draft, running it through legal, diplomatic, and historical review. When he finally broadcast it across all Imperial channels, Sarah watched the galactic networks explode with reactions. Shock, anger, grief, relief. Species across 47 systems learning that their grandparents' crazy stories had been true all along. There's going to be fallout from this, Vexthul observed. Good, Sarah said. There should be. You can't erase millions of lives and expect a quiet aftermath. 3 weeks later, the Galactic War Memorial opened on the Council's central station. Sarah stood before the primary display case, her grandmother's medal resting on a velvet cushion under preservation glass. The broken clasp was clearly visible, highlighted by the lighting. You're sure you want to donate it? Kaeldra asked. She'd thrown herself into the Commission's work with an almost desperate energy, uncovering suppressed files at a rate that suggested decades of suspicions finally being confirmed. Grandma would want it here, Sarah said, where everyone can see it. Where no one can forget. The placard beneath read, in 47 different languages, Coalition Defense Force Medal, 2247-224 NEET, kept broken by choice. A reminder that some truths survive even when empires try to erase them. By the way, Sarah added casually, I should mention that Proxima 7 wasn't the only conflict humans participated in. The Veterans Network has documented coalition involvement in 14 other forgotten wars between 2245 and 2253. We have similar archives for all of them. Zilax, who'd been admiring the memorial, went very still. 14? Give or take. Some of the records are fragmentary and we're still interviewing descendants, but yeah, 14 major conflicts, multiple minor ones. Turns out humans got around during that period. Sarah pulled up her tablet. There's a family reunion next month on Earth. About 4,000 Coalition veteran descendants comparing notes and digitizing their family archives. Should have a more complete picture after that. 4,000 families. Vexthul sounded like he was doing calculations in his head. That's potentially 4,000 independent sources of suppressed imperial history. At minimum, Sarah agreed cheerfully. And that's just the families who know they have coalition ancestors. There are probably more who haven't connected the dots yet. Kaeldra made a sound between a laugh and a sob. You're walking backup drives. Humans are walking backup drives of galactic history. Pretty much. We're like the universe's most stubborn archive system, completely unhackable, distributed across thousands of locations, and really insistent about keeping the original hard copies. Sarah grinned. The Earth Colonial Historical Society has a saying, paper remembers what power forgets. Do humans keep everything? Vexthul asked. Every conflict, every event, every detail. Sarah thought about her mother's attic, stuffed with boxes of her grandfather's Navy service records, about the Historical Society's climate-controlled warehouses full of journals and letters and photographs, about the old veterans who recorded oral histories before they died, making sure their grandchildren would know the truth. We learned the hard way, she said quietly. Forget history, repeat it. So yeah, we keep everything. The good, the bad, the inconvenient. Especially the inconvenient. Because someone, someday, is going to need to know what really happened. The Council's new historical verification policy was implemented the following month. All official imperial histories would be reviewed by human archivists before publication, not for censorship, but for accuracy, to make sure the Empire's digital perfection didn't erase inconvenient truths again. Sarah was reading the policy document on her tablet when Zelax found her in the commissary, eating lunch. "This is going to change everything," he said, sitting down across from her. "Good," Sarah said around a bite of sandwich. "That's kind of the point. The Empire will never be able to control the narrative again, not with humans cross-referencing every claim against physical archives." "Again, good." Sarah took a sip of coffee. "History isn't supposed to be controlled. It's supposed to be preserved, even when it's ugly." Zelax looked at her for a long moment. "Your grandmother would be proud." "Yeah," Sarah smiled, touching the pendant she wore now, a replica of the broken metal, clasp and all. "Yeah, she would be." Her tablet pinged with a message from her mother. "Found more of Grandpa's Navy stuff in the attic. Some interesting things about Kepler 442. Should I send them to you?" Sarah typed back, "Absolutely. The Commission is going to want to see those." She looked up at Zelax. "Speaking of which, I need to make a call after lunch. Turns out my grandfather served in the Coalition Navy during the Kepler 442 incident. My mom just found his service records. The Kepler 442 incident doesn't exist in our files," Zelax said automatically. Then he stopped, sighed. "Let me guess. Mining accident? Economic restructuring, according to the official records, but Grandpa's journal probably says otherwise." Sarah finished her sandwich and stood. "I'll have the scans sent to the Commission by end of day. Should make interesting reading." She headed for the exit, already pulling up her mom's contact info. Zelax watched her go, then looked up at the memorial visible through the commissary windows. A broken medal under glass, proof that truth survived even when buried under centuries of lies. The Empire had spent 4 centuries perfecting digital historical control. Humanity had spent 4 centuries keeping shoeboxes full of paper in their attics. In the end, the shoeboxes won.